When you go to Disney, do they measure the number of hours you wait in line?
The head of the VA said his agency should not be measured by how long veterans wait for service and care.
We know we have an issue getting people in. We do know that, and we're working hard on it.
So we'll examine the waits and complaints from veterans across Florida.
It's possible that I could be responsible for one of those people's deaths and not even know it.
Why do they do this?
We'll also look into the violence and chaos on the campaign trail with perspective from Republican strategist Adam Goodman.
I'm going to be really good for women.
Plus, we'll take a closer look at the gender gap in politics. We'll explain when and why it started and how Donald Trump could either reverse or expand it this year. John Wilson weighs in on that with My View Now.
That gap with Mr. Trump cannot be overcome unless he finds a way to stop insulting women.
And in our humor segment, Charlie Belcher interrupts our conversation with a Democratic frontrunner.
Click.
What's that? This is Money, Power, and Politics. Well, Donald Trump has a problem with women that goes far beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Well, Rosie O'Donnell's disgusting. I mean, both inside and out. You take a look at her, she's a slob. We're all a little chubby, but Rosie's just worse than most of us.
Pundits say Trump is trailing badly among women because he's offended women in the past by some of the things he said.
Do you treat women with respect?
I can't say that either.
All right.
And that's why Trump's opponents are trying to tear him down by using some of his own words against him.
Women, you have to treat them like.
But that strategy may not work as well as some of Trump's critics may hope, because something else triggered the gender gap in our politics, and it started long before Trump.
I'm going to be really good for women.
Women have tended to favor Democrats by a 7 to 11 point margin for decades. But Republicans did not have that gender gap until 1980 when Ronald Reagan came along.
Well, I can change that in a hurry.
Now, that's from an old movie. But in real life, Reagan lost ground with women and gained ground with men on policy, specifically as it relates to the size and role of government.
It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed.
Reagan focused the race on making the military bigger and most of the rest of our government smaller.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
And that attracted men who statistically place a higher value in national defense and self-reliance, and it turned away women who statistically favor a more active government for several reasons.
Women deserve equal pay for equal work.
For example, women statistically earn less than men, so they tend to favor more government intervention to address that. And women who make up a big part of the health and education workforces tend to favor more government help in those professions.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
And so that gender gap that started with Reagan took hold. Democrats developed a problem with men that exists to this day, and Republicans developed a problem with women that exists to this day. And they didn't exactly help their case with some of the things they've said.
They brought us whole binders full of women.
And that brings us to Trump, who has also certainly said some things that are off-putting to many women. And that's certainly not helping his case. But remember, the gender gap started with differences on policy. And in time, Trump could close, or at least narrow that gap by promoting different policies than the Republican establishment, from foreign affairs to education to health care.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say.
Universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
Who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it.
Trump certainly has a long way to go to close the gap, and some of his prior statements and positions will not make it easy. But he's changing the rules of the game in a very unpredictable year. And as we've seen before, his opponents often underestimate him at their own peril. Well, last week we started something new. A very familiar face joined us as a special guest. John Wilson, our former anchor, gave us the news and perspective here for more than 50 years. And it's time now for his view once again.
This is John Wilson's My View Now.
And so it's My View Now with John Wilson. Thank you once again for joining us.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
Can the Republican Party close the gender gap this year?
Where do we go with that? And how damaging is it? Well, it's incredibly damaging to Donald Trump. The thing to keep in mind here is that there are more women voters than men voters. It has been that way since the 1980s. So that's an issue for Donald Trump, because that gap with Mr. Trump cannot be overcome unless he finds a way to stop insulting women and stop insulting minorities and stop insulting immigrants. He's got to stop that, because he's going to depend on the women vote to get him across. And I don't know, right now, I think that's his biggest fear right now, is how do I bring that vote back? Campaigning is one thing. You say a lot of things you don't mean, you can't do, but now we're at the point where he is the presumptive nominee, and he's got to be, and he is. You're watching him. We see him changing his demeanor already. Well, it's got to change considerably more than it is now to suit, I think, a lot of women who are trying to figure out if they can accommodate him or not in his thinking. And frankly, we don't know what he's thinking. We don't know.
Even if he stops insulting anyone today, you can't unring the bell from what he said in the past. How damaging can that be, even if here and now, if Donald Trump stops insulting anyone from here on out, is the damage done?
Well, to some degree, the damage is done. There are people who are not going to believe he was able to convert himself into a more reasonable thinking person after having made such brash statements. But she's made them too. She's turned them around as well. You can put her negatives and positives right up beside each other, just as you can Donald Trump. That's what makes it really difficult here, or we wouldn't have a choice with Donald Trump. Now we've got a decision to make. Which of the two?
Republicans have had a gender gap since 1980, putting the behavior and temperament of Donald Trump aside. Is there anything the Republicans can do to close it on policy as opposed to tone?
Well, yes, there are specific issues with respect to policy, and that's what women are keyed to. We've got to be really careful about what positions you take, and take them in a way that you can actually develop them and then maintain them. What we've seen is flip-flops by both sides. What you've not been able to do is get a consistent thread of policy from either of these candidates, Craig, either one.
And with consistency comes trust.
Well, you're right on the money there. The trust factor is the one that's giving us the most trouble, isn't it? Can we trust him? Can we trust her? We don't know that. And I don't know who knows that. And you've got essentially two people who have both, and I hate to use the term, and I'm sorry and I apologize for it, but both of them have lied. Both have. Run the videos. You can see it. You can watch it. What do we do about that? That damages the trust factor, but particularly with women. Women are unforgiving. they don't, men can turn around on a lot of things. Women are not so quick to do that. I'm not saying they hold a grudge, but they remember. They remember who made what mistakes.
You heard it here. John, thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Coming up, the head of the VA may regret saying this.
The days to an appointment is really not what we should be measuring.
We investigate the wait times and continuing problems for veterans in Florida.
They just let you down.
Total betrayal from our government.
Robert McDonald Service's VA secretary got off to a bad start when he got caught up in a lie.
What unit? Special Forces. Special Forces? What years? I was in Special Forces.
I never served in combat.
I was in Special Forces.
In an attempt to connect with that veteran to make him feel comfortable, I incorrectly stated that I too had been in Special Forces. That was wrong, and I have no excuse.
Now McDonald is under fire for comparing waits at VA clinics to waiting in line at Disney. So we want to show you why that triggered outrage with our veterans here at home.
Our veterans served and sacrificed to uphold our values and defend our nation. But then when they needed help, our nation left many of them to suffer and die.
Why do they do this?
Records show 307,000 veterans may have died waiting for access to VA health care.
They just let you down.
And by waiting for access, we mean they could not even get enrolled in the system.
Total betrayal from our government.
And veterans who did get enrolled said they had to wait months to see a doctor.
About a year before you get the actual appointment.
We've investigated complaints of excessive wait times for benefits and health care for the past 3 years.
When it says, what is the patient's desired date? Instead of using that date, we use the date of the appointment that we actually give them. That way, it shows no gap.
Last year, former VA scheduler Nick McSwain told us he was pressured by some of his managers to push back appointments.
It's possible that I could be responsible for one of those people's deaths and not even know it.
And throughout this year, we've investigated glitches in a new billion-dollar claim system that's causing more disruptions and delays.
You know, this is ridiculous.
So, as VA Secretary Robert McDonald faced mounting complaints of delays in benefits and medical care, he admitted he has a problem.
We know we have an issue getting people in. We do know that, and we're working hard on it.
But then he pushed back by saying the VA should not be measured by wait times.
The days to an appointment is really not what we should be measuring.
And that's when he drew a comparison that has veterans and lawmakers shaking their heads.
When you go to Disney, do they measure the number of hours you wait in line?
McDonald apparently didn't realize that Disney measures wait times down to the minute, and his remarks comparing waits for veteran care to theme park rides triggered bipartisan outrage.
These kinds of disgusting comments that show you do not have the proper empathy needs to be addressed. And I don't know how he's going to fix it, but he needs to fix it. This really is just beyond the pale, a comment like this. It just shows kind of the arrogance of the federal bureaucracy.
The VA responded with a statement noting that wait times alone are not the only indication of a veteran's experience, and we must transform the way we do business.
Well, Deputy VA Secretary Sloan Gibson apologized on behalf of the agency. He said he and the secretary regret the distraction caused by McDonald's remarks. Well, we've asked Gibson about the scheduling problems and waits for veteran care long before this.
How many people have been fired this year at VA specifically for inappropriate scheduling practices?
I can't give you a number for inappropriate scheduling practices. But the much more important issue here has to do with sustainable accountability. This is world-class healthcare, what you're delivering here in Florida. You know, why don't we go do a story about that? Be a great story there in the Tampa market.
Watch the full interview with Gibson on our YouTube channel. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics. And also, please catch our 30-minute investigation of the VA scandal and continuing complaints from veterans here in Tampa Bay. Look for the special program called Forgotten Heroes and the War at Home.
Coming up, the race for president spun into chaos yet again. We'll show you what to expect next week with strategist Adam Goodman. Then, in our humor segment, you won't believe who called.
Hey, welcome to Politics. Thanks for calling.
Hey, great to be with you all. Thanks for having me.
The anti-Trump protests erupted outside. Protesters gridlocked the streets of Albuquerque. Some burned Trump banners. Others shattered a door at the convention center, and police say others threw rocks and jumped on police cars. As for Trump, he called the protesters outside his rally in New Mexico thugs and criminals.
Okay, please welcome Republican strategist Adam Goodman. Adam, at this point, what can Donald Trump say and what should he say to his supporters and to his protesters to prevent more violence from breaking out in the future?
Well, I'm not sure either Donald Trump or we've seen recently Bernie Sanders can actually control what has become a movement on both sides of the fence. It's passionate. It's virtual. It's not just there in presidents. You see it all over social media. And it's kind of taken over this campaign.
So you don't want to see doors getting shattered and certainly not people getting hurt. At this point, is there anything on both sides they can do to keep this in check?
Great question. Yes, I think all of the major candidates should speak out and decry violence wherever it happens, whenever it happens. It's amazing. They just passed out a pamphlet, the police did, where Donald Trump was in a rally. And they were saying, remember, you cannot burn, loot, or do anything that borders on violence. Imagine having to get a pamphlet, a flyer warning you not basically to break the law. I think that this is something that all the major candidates have to come down on hard.
And Hillary Clinton, more trouble with her email, with the IG report. She said it was a mistake. She said she is sorry. At this point, is there anything more she can do to stem the bleeding?
Well, you know, we did learn that the Inspector General asked to interview the Secretary and top aides. They refused. So right now you have a situation where Secretary Clinton has Bernie Sanders on the left, Donald Trump on the right, and the Inspector General right up the middle. she has her hands full. And as with everything in a campaign, the moment of truth is what you do when you're on the mat, when you're down on the mat. I'd say it's fair to say that today Hillary Clinton is in that position.
Adam Goodman, as always, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, we have a special guest in our humor segment.
And then Charlie said, he tells us one all the time, commentator.
Plus, Charlie Belcher answers my mail.
Craig is a card-carrying journalist, which means he's an equal opportunity offender.
Phone's ring. Chance to try my cheesy new greeting. Hey, welcome to Politics. Thanks for calling.
Hey, great to be with you all. Thanks for having me.
Oh, Secretary Clinton, I am so... I don't have a watch. I forgot about our interview.
That was a mistake.
I know. That's on me. I'll be right there.
And I might as well check his mail. Let's see here this week. What's in Craig's mailbox? Here's the first one from Clara in Clearwater. Dear Mr. O'Reilly, I think you were being mean in that interview. Clara, I think you have the wrong email with Fox 13. We like the folks over at the Fox News Channel. They are not here in Tampa. We're Fox 13. But I will forward this to Mr. O'Reilly. Done. Dear Craig, settle a bet. My husband says you are a Republican, but I say you are a Democrat. Who is right? Lauren in Newport Richie. I can answer that, Lauren. Craig is a card-carrying journalist, which means he's an equal opportunity offender. If he hasn't offended your party, just stay tuned.
Secretary Clinton, I cannot believe what you just said.
And everybody else is doing it.
I've got just a few more questions about that.
I've said no twice.
Okay, then let me just close maybe with some jokes from Charlie Belcher.
Let's see. Oh, here's some Facebook comments. We love the Facebook. Find us on the Facebook. Money, Power, Politics. Diane Joyce says, OMG. OMG. That must be a typo. Funny stuff. Good for her. Jim Archer says, too funny. Looking forward to more funnies like this. Obviously, he was not talking about one of the investigative pieces. Joan Kent says, too funny. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. We don't want it to be too funny. Just funny enough. And Carmen says, love Charlie's smile and charm. I hope I get to watch. So you haven't watched, or you will watch? You're watching now, I know. Timothy Cleary says, in all caps, which means he's screaming at us, another masterpiece. Thank you, Timothy. I enjoyed all of your commentaries, Craig. This was extra special. Thanks for being an excellent reporter/commentator. That's nice. That reminds me of a potato joke. That's, how did that joke go? Why did the king potato not want his daughter to marry the village potato because he was just a commentator?
And then Charlie said, he tells us one all the time, commentator.
Dear Craig, click on this link to receive a free gift. Craig's not here, I get the gift. Click.
What's that? Oh, that sounds like an email alert. You know what that's like.
I was really tired that day. What can I say?
Secretary, I'm so sorry. Charlie must have messed something up. I've got to run.
Thanks, Charlie.
Charlie, what did you do with my email?
Nothing of that. Let me just exit out of that.
Now, you were making fun of my VHS collection last week. Now you do this.
Yeah, we'll call our IT services person and they'll
got a backup here.
Control-Alt-Delete.
JKLMNO JKL.
1983 called. They'd like their phone back, Craig.
All right. Well, how about the funny of the week?
Okay. You know what? This, fortunately, your email is now officially locked out, but I can get back on Twitter. And did you see Marco Rubio's tweet?
What did he say?
Well, you know, he got caught in the debate, the famous his debate gaffe, where he got caught in his talking points, just kind of repeating.
Robot
kind
mode.
Kind of repeating.
And let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. But I would add this, let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly
there it is.
what...
Kind of repeating.
Go, Marco! Barack Obama knows exactly what he's doing! Barack Obama knows exactly what he's doing!
And the headline was Rubio second guesses himself on robotic moment.
Data inaccurate, does not compute.
And then he, being funny, decided to tweet, Rubio second guesses on robotic moment, Rubio second guesses on robotic moment, Rubio second guesses on robotic moment.
That will never happen again. That will never happen again. Happen again. Happen again. 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 Again.
Again. So he's not a robot, but he plays one on TV.
The single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. The greatest nation in the history of mankind. The single greatest nation.
The single greatest nation in all mankind.
Well, at least he has a sense of humor about it.
Yeah, now he can laugh about it.
We picked on him a lot about that, too.
Yeah, but politicians are always funnier when they stop running for something.
Yep, and so, well, this time he was funny along the way, too.
Yeah, that's Craig's opinion.
Okay, it's time. It's time now to bring everybody else in.
Yes, and if you would like to get involved, you want us to read your comments, your emails, send us snail mail, however you do it. The best way, you can see on your screen right there. Find us on YouTube. Craig likes to post these all over the internet, so you can find them anywhere. YouTube, you can leave a comment. Facebook, leave a comment. Tweet us, email us. We'll get your opinions heard. You can snail mail us too here at 3213 West Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa. And 2 weeks from now, we will pretend we didn't get it.
All right, I've got to go now. I've got to call the IT guy.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.